as I said, pop yourself on mute, keep your cameras on if you can, but at the same time, I do understand this is over lunchtime, so if you do want to have a nibble or something, feel free to turn your camera off then, but it just certainly makes it a lot more interactive, and it means that I can gauge whether or not people have questions that they're not asking and that sort of thing, so it's always helpful to keep your video on. And as mentioned before, we are recording, so just ask questions along the way through. Now this looks like a lot, but don't worry, it's not going to be overwhelming. That's the whole point of Cynch, and the way that we approach things is to make things not overwhelming. But we'll go through some introductions because I do want this to be an interactive session. And then I'll talk through some of the common myths when it comes to small business and cyber threats and attacks. I'll introduce you to the CIA. It sounds all very spooky, but it's just a cool name for a way to think about risks. And then I'll help you identify who the boss is in your business. How can these things happen? How can things go wrong? I'll tell you a funny little story about I'll help you understand and find a way to see whether or not your email address has been caught up in any of the data breaches in the past, and give you some guidelines on how to lock your systems down. Also give you some hints and tips on how to spot a phishing attack or dodgy email. I will help you understand whether or not you can be trusted and how good is your email reputation. Teach you a little bit about comms the right way and whether or not you're fresh and up to date. How to know where your information is and whether or not you're backing things up. And then, of course, who to call if everything goes wrong, and just give you a bit of a brief walkthrough about some of the free resources that we have available through Cynch. So first of all, a little bit about Cynch. So as Lisa mentioned, myself and Adam, who's the one on the far right then, started Cynch back in 2018. It was actually something that we started working on conceptually back in 2017 though. And so Adam and I met each other when we were both working at Australia Post, and we spent 6 months working on a project within Post that was helping small business owners that had suffered from a data breach and helping them to basically deal with the consequences of that. So we've essentially spent 6 months on the phone to small business owners that were having the worst day of their working lives and hearing about the challenges, first of all, of dealing with that actual incident and everything that goes with having to respond, but also learning a lot about how they got themselves into that position in the first place, and realising this huge gap within the market. When you sit back and look at the cybersecurity industry, you have a stack of large vendors that are focusing at the very top end of town, trying to support companies like Australia Post that have lots of money, or you have lots of point solutions that typically look to support an individual. So things like you'll see lots of NordVPN ads and password managers that are aimed as you as a person. But when it comes to a small business, there was a complete lack of support out there. So Adam and I decided that we needed to solve this problem, and that's where Cynch started. So we are wholly small business focused, and largely when we talk small business, we're talking about businesses that usually have fewer than 20 staff. We also talk about cyber fitness, and this is a concept that I'll probably start talking about a whole stack throughout this session. But when we talk about cyber fitness, it's recognition that you don't need to do it all at once. It doesn't need to be a huge exercise that's going to break the bank and your brain all at once. You can actually break things down into small incremental steps that you can undertake over time. And that way it's easier to maintain. It's also easier to build up the strength and the resilience that you need to. This number is actually a little bit out of date, where through our platform, we're actually supporting over 300 businesses now. It sounds as though we already know this, so I will probably fly through this slide because it sounds like we're all pretty wide awake to this. But some of the things that we've heard throughout our journey, particularly talking to people not working in small businesses, but about the perception that they have of what small business owners think, is the whole "I'm too small, no one would bother to attack me." Unfortunately, that is just dead wrong. It's dead wrong for a few reasons. So first of all, they're not necessarily attacking you per se. They're not looking up your business and going, I'm going to attack that one. What they're doing is attacking the systems and the technology that you rely on, and they're doing this largely in an automated fashion. They may not have the vaguest idea who you are behind your business or what you do, because they don't care. What they're doing is attacking the technologies that you rely on, and then using those attacks to basically gain funds and gain your attention. The next one is, and I hear this quite a lot these days, is, oh, but I only use Microsoft 365 or G Suite, my website, so there's no risk, there's nothing there. The reality is it's just not true these days. For starters, we've all got mobile phones, we've all got laptops. Sure, your email might be on Office 365 or G Suite, but we all use Xero or Mail for our accounting. We've got internet banking, we've got social media accounts, and a lot of the time we're using the same password across all of those systems. So that means that any one of those systems that are breached, all of them can be breached. And then the last one, and this is the one that we at Cynch directly try to tackle, is that I don't have time or the money or the expertise to work on cybersecurity. This we really do understand. Certainly as a business owner myself, I know that there's a million and one things that I'm juggling every day, and you all would be doing the same thing. But I guess part of what I'd like you to walk away with today is the knowledge that it doesn't have to take a lot of time, and it certainly doesn't need expertise to be able to do something to make your business more secure. So I spoke before about the other CIA. So this just helps to contextualize a way that you can think about cyber risks. So quite often you hear about cyber risks or cyber incidents and data breaches all in the one term, but data breaches are really just one type of cyber security incident that can occur. So we talk about the CIA. So the first one is confidentiality. So this really is your data breach. So this is somebody gaining access to the data, whether it be confidential, sensitive, personal, whatever it is, the data and the information that you serve. And so a lot of these issues end up falling under the duress of the Office of Information, Australian Information Commissioner, so Privacy Act. But then the next one is integrity. And so this is where a cyber attack is designed to attack the integrity of your data or your system so that you can no longer rely on them. I'll give you an example in a moment of how this can sort of play out, but it's not just about thinking about breaches or somebody stealing your information. It's also about how somebody could attack the information and make it so that it's no longer reliable. And the last one is availability. So this is the ransomware attack, as you talked about before, Evelyn. So somebody taking away your ability to actually access your systems altogether. The way that I think about this is thinking about a hospital setting. So in a hospital setting, if there's a data breach and so somebody gains access to a whole bunch of patients' data and health information, naturally that would be a privacy incident. It would probably make the front page of the papers. But for a lot of people, having somebody have access to their health information may not actually make a big difference to their daily lives. However, if in that same setting, instead of stealing the information, the attacker actually got into the systems and changed the blood types that were recorded against all of those patients' information, now all of a sudden you've got a life or death situation. So it depends on the industry, the type of business you have, the type of technology you have, as to whether or not this is a bigger issue or a smaller issue than confidentiality. The last one is availability, and the best example of this was back in 2017. There was 2017, I think it was 2017, there was a global ransomware attack called WannaCry, and this actually took down the national health system in the UK to the point where hospitals were having to turn patients away from emergency surgeries because they could no longer actually see in their systems where they had beds, who was in the hospitals, everything. There were complete hospitals shut down from that. So again, that turned very quickly into a life or death situation. Now, luckily, it doesn't look like any of us here on this call are going to be facing a life or death situation, but it's just important to kind of contextualize that and just think that it's not always about data breaches, which is what usually hits the front page of the papers. It's also about what other damage could be done within your business. Having some systems in place where you're not actually you're not controlling how easy it is to send, attach the wrong thing and then email it out of your systems, or just generally people just making innocent mistakes or being rushed into making mistakes. Naturally, there are tricks and scams, social engineering exercises being undertaken against small businesses that can certainly trick you into doing the wrong thing accidentally. Gaps, and this is where you think you've got all the right processes in place, but you haven't tested it. And so those controls that might ordinarily have stopped something from going off into the wrong place, turns out you didn't have that control in place. And the last one is discontented staff, which it looks like here, again, because a lot of us are sole practitioners, it's less of a concern here, but if you were to start growing your business, that's when you need to start thinking about controls around staff access and how much damage somebody could do if they did get a bit disgruntled along the way. Now this one, Mark Zuckerberg, this is one of my favourite little stories to put this into context and to talk about just how easy it is for things to go wrong. So back a few years ago now, it was before Facebook's IPO, his Twitter account was hacked, and it was hacked because this was the oh so complicated password that he had used for his Twitter account. He had also used this password of da on his LinkedIn account, and LinkedIn had just had a large data breach. And so essentially the hackers had gone on, found his details, tried their luck on Twitter, and took over the entire account. And so it says, you may not be able to read it there, but it's, hey, it's our mine. Don't worry, we're just testing your security. Please contact us to tell us more about that, and you can help to keep your account safe. So in this particular incident, he was relatively lucky in that he was alerted immediately by his new profile commentary. But this is one of the biggest issues when you reuse passwords across multiple accounts. So one of the first things, and both Kirsten and Lisa would have heard me say this a million times over, and I will say it again. First of all, I truly encourage all of you to adopt using a password manager within your business. So it's a piece of software to help you. It's essentially like a safe or a vault where you put all of your passwords in that. All you need to remember is the password to get into the vault, and then it can store very unique, very strong passwords across all of your different accounts. It's very convenient to use because it means you only have to remember one password, and yet everything has different passwords across the accounts. But the security on password managers is far better than any system you would be able to implement yourself to come up with very unique passwords that you still remember. So that's the first one. The second one, tip that I would give everybody as well to avoid this is to use multi-factor authentication. So that's when you have your username and password, and then you also get either a text message code to your phone, or you use, Google Authenticator app on your phone to generate a second code. Two-factor authentication is globally recognized as one of the most effective controls that you can have in place to avoid credential compromising. So if you take nothing else away, please consider that. Jen, did you have a question?
Yeah, just with the multi-factor authenticator. So I have had an issue recently where I had that Google Authenticator on an account, but when I tried to use it, it was saying that the password was incorrect, that it wasn't valid.
Okay.
I lost complete access to that account. I had to try and chase up the company who runs that website, and they didn't really understand what I was trying to ask them, but they also refused to disable that two-step authenticator so that I could fix it up and reconnect it. And so I just told them to delete my account from them, and I won't ever use them again. So
was it the password that had an issue, or was it the authenticator code connection?
Code.
Right. Okay. That's really unfortunate, and it's not something that commonly occurs. So I wouldn't. But my first piece of advice is I would say I wouldn't let that put you off using it. But there are usually, when you at the time that you set up multi-factor authentication on a particular system, you will also usually be given backup codes, 10 backup codes that are unique backup codes that you can use to basically get around that whole authenticator issue if you are having problems. And so anytime that you set up multi-factor, I would suggest you print off or store securely those backup codes, and you can use that then as basically a backdoor to be able to recover that account.
Okay. I don't recall ever seeing backup codes, so I'll have to keep an extra close eye out for that.
Yeah, normally it'll be sort of just off in the corner down the bottom. It'll say, you know, here's your backup codes, or do you want to store your backup codes? I don't know why they hide it away and make it not very obvious, but there will usually be a way using backup codes at the end.
Yep. Cool, thank you.
Cool. So this is just talking about the same thing there. So when you're establishing your passwords, make sure they are long, 12 at least unique letters or numbers or characters. Unique, so this is making sure that you're not using the same password across multiple accounts, and hard to guess. So I remember my mum back when I was at uni, so I didn't know any better either. She was all very proud of herself because she'd found a way to remember her passwords, in that she was using my sister's name and 1, 2, 3, 4 at the end of it. You know, whether or not a name is long or a word is long, if it's not hard to guess, if anybody is going to know your child's name or your partner's name, and it's going to be easy to guess, it's going to be easy to guess. And so again, that's where password managers can really help you, because they will actually generate a long, unique, hard to guess code for you, save it into the system. You never even have to remember it. In fact, normally you don't even have to type it, because as long as you've got your password manager installed on your laptop and your phone, it will automatically enter it for you. So it really does make the whole process a lot easier. And this, just to really reiterate the point here, these are how much time it would take for a hacker to crack these passwords. So password 123, which I'm sure we've all seen, you know, welcome 1 or password 123, any of those, they will instantly be cracked by any hacker that is trying to do it. Spaghetti like that is less than 30 minutes. Spaghetti using a 5, you're now talking up to an hour. Random letters and codes, you're talking 2.5 hours. Whereas I don't like pineapple on my pizza that long, you're talking about over 40 days. And so the more complicated and longer that you can make it, the better. And again, way easier if you're using a password manager to think about it and to generate it. Now this one, I might just get everybody, if you've got a second screen, or you could even do it on your phone, what I would suggest you do is go to this website, which is haveibeenpwned, pwned.com. So this website was established, I think about five or 7 years ago now, by a very well-renowned and respected Australian security researcher called Troy Hunt. And what he has essentially done with this website is collated all of the email addresses that have been publicly caught up in huge data breaches over that period of time, and recorded it in here. So what you do is you go to that site, you put your own email address into that website and press enter, and it will tell you whether or not your email address has shown up in any of these large public data breaches. So don't worry, you're not giving away any details here, though there is quite open and published security controls in the background of this site. But if you're popping in your email address and it pops up and says, oh no, you've been pwned, if you scroll down the screen, it will actually tell you which accounts or which data breaches your email address was caught up in. What is also really good about this is that you can actually register your email address so that you are notified in the future if your email address ever pops up in one of these public data breaches. You can do that on an individual basis, and you can register as many email addresses as you like, but also for those people that are running slightly larger businesses or teams, you can actually register your domain so that if anybody in your team is caught up in a data breach, you are notified. Anybody want to volunteer with how many times they've popped up on there?
I've got 3.
2, yep. 2, yep. So my personal email address that I've had since I was 15, I have on there 5 times. Cynch has never popped up on there. My Cynch email address hasn't. But my business partner, Adam, who as the technologist and the person that signs up to every subscription under the sun so that he can test it out and play with it, he has 17. So it's a really, really valuable tool by a very respected individual. So I highly encourage you to check that out in greater detail and get across it.
Sorry, Susie, just a quick question. What is that, where is the best place that we can go if we do want to be notified? Where do we register our addresses or domain names?
So it is actually on that same site.
So, okay.
Yeah, so I can't remember exactly which button, but it is on that same site. So
I'll check it out and find it.
Yes, yes.
Oh, there it is, notify me.
Yeah, that's right. So the next thing to consider when you're thinking about the security of your business overall is securing access to your systems. Now, again, it's a little bit different for yourselves, although it's a bit different for the business in heels, ladies, compared to the other sole practitioners on here. But it's really important to think about securing your access and securing your access to each and every system that you use, whether it be cloud-based, whether it's a social media account, whether it's an actual device. And so this is a process, and I'll make sure that these slides are made available to you afterwards as well. But the easiest process is to pick any technology that's running from your office and think about, and this is when you're thinking about working remotely or in an office, think about, do you need to access this technology remotely? If the answer is no, then do not allow it to be accessed remotely. Simple as that. If the answer is yes, so is this something unique to your business? Yes. Do you need to access from a web browser? Yes. Okay, then perhaps you go to an extranet. If the answer when you said, is this something unique to your business? No. So is there a cloud alternative? Yes, then move it to the cloud. There are some perceptions out there that cloud solutions are less secure. That is not the case. It is just different security in place. But when it comes to operating remotely, in general, cloud solutions are better fit for working remotely, and so therefore have better security controls that are built in. You might just need to turn them on. And so that's here when we talk about using an Office VPN or setting up some sort of remote desktop. So these are the sorts of decisions that we recommend that you go through for each of your technologies. We're not going to have time in this session to go through it in any great detail, but if certainly there's further information on this in particular on our website and on our blog, under our blogs, so you can find out more information there. And then, of course, we've also got our services. But this is generally how to think about it: is at each decision point, think about, do I really need access to this? What do I need to do? And use multi-factor authentication. I'm never going to not stop saying that. So you might get sick of it, but I'm never going to stop saying it. Now, this point is just something that it's worth really highlighting to you. Evelyn, this would be something that is meaningful to yourself as well, considering what you went through. So 99% of email attacks need you to do something, but do not think that if you've been caught up by one of these things, that you're silly, that you were wrong, mistaken, that it's your fault. At the end of the day, the cyber threat landscape and cyber attackers and cyber criminal industries is $1 trillion industry. So it is their job to trick you. But that means that as business owners, it needs to be a very big part of your job to stop them from tricking you and to take those extra few seconds to think, does this make sense? If this person is contacting me, for example, Evelyn, some of those people that were sent an invoice from you with the wrong bank details, it is their responsibility to go, hold on, does it really make sense that Evelyn would be sending this to me without a phone call or asking me? This also means that you can help your suppliers and your customers by putting a simple thing like at the bottom of your email signature saying, I will never email you new bank account details without a phone call first. Those sorts of indications to say that that you are taking it seriously and that you will always check and asking them to do the same thing, because 99% of email attacks need you to do something. This is where things like the phishing attacks of old, where it used to be the Nigerian prince, they of course were really easy to spot. So that was all fine. But particularly this year, throughout COVID, the sophistication of the attacks that are being made against every business, including small businesses, is really scary, but also cause for taking a few more moments before you click on that link, before you send an email before you do whatever it is that you're being asked to do. So just this year, we've seen things like earlier on in the year, websites for personal home tests for COVID-19. So for business owners who are concerned about how to get their teams tested. Things like very cheap websites on how to buy laptops when all of the business owners were trying to move to remote and buy their team laptops. There were all sorts of sites pretending to be government offering COVID-19, you like this website, COVID-19 Relieve, not relief, but all sorts of, funding scams, etc. And then also access controls, and those really playing on those fears, fear of these sort of incidents. Another place that is a free service that I suggest everybody sign up to as well is Stay Smart Online. So this is an Australian government site, and when you sign up to them, you will then receive relatively regular, you won't be flooded with them, but relatively regular alerts on the common scams that we're seeing right across Australia as well. So it can really help you to stay on top of what the latest trends are and keep you being alert over time. This as well, if you do have anything suspicious and you think it's worth us letting our small business customers know, feel free to send us an email with a screenshot. Please don't actually send the malicious email, but feel free to send us a screenshot of the email, and we can make sure that we're letting all of our small business customers know, so that all collectively we can stay on top of it. Now, this is another website that I'll get everybody to go to. So it's emailrep.io. So what this website will do, and just follow the instructions on the website, but what this website will do is actually check the reputation of your email address. So I'm not sure whether or not anybody on the call has experienced this, but in the past I've had work email addresses that for whatever reason just seem to keep hitting people's spam inbox. And not only was that incredibly frustrating from an operational and efficiency perspective, because it meant that I was constantly chasing people saying, did you get my email? Have you checked your spam? But also it just really wasn't a very good look. If your emails are constantly getting thrown into spam, then your reputation in your business can go down as well. So this check here will give you an indication of just how trustworthy your email address is. What I would suggest is if it comes up that it does need improvement, etc., then speak to somebody you trust in terms of IT support to talk to them about how you can improve your email reputation. We certainly do have advice on how to do this within our platform as well, but so feel free to reach out, but it's just something to really think about, because this can also make it easier for people to impersonate your email address and send emails purporting to be from you that are not from you if you do have a low email reputation. Any questions on that?
No, I was just going to say, Susie, just even on your other one, back on your other slide, the one that I'm being hit with at the moment is through Dropbox.
Yep. Yep.
And it always appears to be from someone I've recently engaged with. And it's sort of like, well, hang on, I know that we're talking about this. So the last one I did, I wrote back going, got this particular message. Given that we haven't done X, I'm not quite sure why you're sending files through, and found out it was a spam that way, but very genuine in terms of definitely a client, and basically download these files through Dropbox, and I'm getting hit every time through Dropbox.
Yeah, right. So it's interesting that that's not necessarily an indication that their Dropbox has been breached. It may be that their email address has been breached, but certainly what I would recommend anytime that you have that you actually jump on a phone call and let them know, because they may have no idea, just like you wouldn't have if you hadn't been notified by your friend, and jump on a phone and let them know, because it certainly sounds like somebody's got some issues within their email inbox.
Yeah. So that's more of an email breach, you're saying, rather than a...
Usually. Yeah.
Right, okay.
Yeah. Usually what it is it will be somebody lurking, similar to what happened to yourself, somebody lurking in the email inbox, watching the traffic. Usually they'll be sitting there for a couple of months, and they'll get to know how that person tends to interact and send files with their customers or partners, etc. And then they normally have they literally have a library suite of email templates purporting to be from Dropbox or anywhere else that they will then use to copy to craft the right message to try and trick their contacts. So normally it does come back to their email address, not always, but normally it does. So if you're getting that regularly from the same people, I'd be giving them a call and getting them to reach out for help.
Cool. Ta.
No worries. Now this one is one that I think over the course of this year, we've all had some pretty big experiences in switching to the likes of Zoom and Google Meet. And yesterday I had a call on Skype for the first time in 6 months. That was a strange experience. But when it comes to communicating online, there are some simple things that you can put in place to make sure that those communications actually stay secure. So using multi-factor authentication again, really, disabling external access if it's not required, limiting who has access details to the overall account, connecting from a private location, control who can join the meeting in the group. So I know, Kirsten, you've been watching who's accessing, so it wasn't just that everybody could jump straight into the Zoom, it's actually somebody needs to click and say, yes, they come in. Set a policy on recording, so within your business, and make sure that if you are recording, you call that out at the start of the session, and also know where the logs are stored. So most of these software solutions will actually store logs so that you can see people entering and exiting throughout the course of the meeting. Make sure you know where they are, so that if something comes up a couple of weeks down the track and you go, I didn't think somebody was in that call, but maybe they were, you have a way to check and can actually see who was involved. Yeah, so that's the big messages there. I feel like we're all gotten pretty good at Zoom and that sort of thing over the course of this year, so I won't stay on this. But yes, how will you verify a request if no one can answer an office phone? So this was something from earlier on in the year that was a pretty big deal when everybody was switching to remote office. I knew personally a number of our customers that didn't used to include their mobile numbers on their email signature. They only ever include their office numbers, so that because they had a process of these sort of verifications going through to the office manager, all of a sudden nobody was in the office, and so they actually couldn't be contacted, and they had a very near miss that could have resulted in a fair chunk of money going out the door if they hadn't recorded it. This one, now this is something that you should do on your, I believe this is on your phone. So just checking what's my OS and checking whether or not it is up to date. So one of the big things that you will often hear security people talk about is patching. But the reality is patching on systems and your phones, that's just doing those updates. So those little annoying red numbers that pop up, and I know I used to have them sitting there for a couple of months before I felt like I got around to doing it. They will almost always be triggered and being sent because there's been a new security vulnerability in the software or the firmware of that device that needs to be updated. And so the longer you wait between getting an alert to say that there's an update there and actually installing it, means the longer that your device is actually vulnerable. Sometimes this particular service may not work and you may need to go into your settings, but I strongly suggest two things. First of all, actually going in both on your laptops and on your mobile phones and making sure that your most recent update on those have been done within the last 30 days. And secondly, where possible, set it up for automatic updates. Usually you can set it up so that it happens overnight. And if there's a third thing that I could recommend, particularly when it comes to your laptops, I would suggest actually turning your laptop off overnight rather than just putting it to sleep, walking away, coming back on in the morning and waking it up. Actually putting it to switching it off overnight means that if any updates, not just in the operating system of your device, but also in the software, will usually get done, so that then when you next open it, it may take an extra minute or two, but that extra minute or two is going to be a lot less time than if you don't do the updates and you actually get caught up in a vulnerability attack. So that's the easiest way to stay on top of it, is to enable automatic updates and then actually turn your computer off. I'll skip over that one. One of the second last thing that I'll get everybody to think about is, where are your copies? So we were talking before about availability risks within businesses, and in particular ransomware attacks. That one of the best ways to actually combat or protect yourself from a ransomware attack or the effects of a ransomware attack is to ensure that you have backups in place. Particularly cloud storage backups can be very, very useful. But then the secondary thing is thinking about where are your copies. So are you storing things actually, even just when you're using and working on documents, are you storing them actually on your computer's hard drive? If you're doing that, that can be a real issue. And just thinking about where all of these things are actually being stored, making sure that you're putting the same protection on any copies of data as you would put actually on your main systems. And then this is the second one around backups. So one thing with backups as well, quite often we might set up for cloud backups or automated, daily backups overnight, etc. if you're using a network. The step that is so critical but often gets missed is actually testing to know, testing to make sure that you know how to recover those backups if you need to. The best time to find out that you've got an issue with your backup is not when you're having to back up because you've had a ransomware attack. So all I can suggest is, normally it doesn't make for a particularly enjoyable Saturday, but normally on a Saturday afternoon when you're not being run off your feet with work, actually putting aside an hour or two to go through your systems backups and actually try and recover from the night before to see, first of all, are you familiar with the process? Can you do it? But second of all, is that backup actually working the way you expect it to work? That's the time that you want to find out if you've got any issues. So particularly over the summer weeks when things are a bit quiet, they would be the time that I would suggest doing this sort of thing when customers aren't jumping on the call and on the phone and telling you that you need to do stuff all the time. That's the time to test it. But there is literally nothing worse than finding out that your backup isn't working when you're actually experiencing an incident. Now, the last thing that I would suggest for everybody is to sit back, and potentially the Christmas period is a good time to spend the time to think about this as well, is to sit back and think about who would I call and what is my plan for if the proverbial actually does hit the fan. And as you found out, Evelyn, there's not a lot of places you can call. There are more places now than what there were 18 months ago. But what's really important is to have a plan in your mind as to who you're going to call and who you're going to reach out to. Through our platform and our automated cyber fitness platform, we can actually help you set up an incident response plan, which will be a written document specific for your business with everybody's phone number recorded, so that if the shit hits the fan, you know exactly who to call, and in that moment of panic, you're not having to pull up the proverbial yellow pages or Google to find somebody to reach out to help. So the whole reason why I have Australian Red Cross Blood Service here is back in, I think it was 2016 now, Australian Red Cross Blood Service actually had a data breach where there was about 300,000 personal records of blood donors that had been accidentally published publicly on a website. And Red Cross Blood Service were globally renowned for the brilliance of their incident response in that circumstance. Well, it was, a horrible situation that nobody wanted to go through, but they were very responsive, very quick, very honest. They got on top of it. They were very clear on what went wrong. They were very clear on the steps that they'd taken. They provided appropriate support, advice to the people that had been affected, and they were very transparent in everything that they did. So I personally have spoken to the information security manager who was in control at the time. He's a fabulous man, and they speak about how concerned they were with this incident. Not so much that the breach had occurred, and obviously that was not great, but what their concern was the reputation damage may actually stop people from feeling confident in donating blood, in which case that could actually lead to loss of life. So for them, they took this as absolutely life or death situation, and their response was absolutely second to none. So if you want to it's not exactly fun reading for you, but if you do want to have a little bit more look into this, on the Office of the Australian Information Commissioner, the Privacy Commissioner, their website, there is actually a case study from their investigation into this, and they spoke about all those things that Red Cross really did right, and they should be things that you should be thinking about in your own incident response plan. This is another organisation, ID Care.org. So ID Care, both on a personal level and a professional level, could be very, very good for all of you. So ID Care are a not-for-profit that are based up in Queensland. They are partners with the university up there, and they provide counselling and support services for individual victims of identity theft and crime. They're a huge call centre. When I went up and met them a few years ago when I was working at Aussie Post, they were just stuck in the old shed at the back of the university. Now they've actually got quite sophisticated offices, thankfully. But they're a call centre of trained counsellors and PhD students who do this stuff every day. So if you find yourself a victim of identity theft, you can always call them. It is free for individuals. But more importantly, as a business owner, if you were to have an incident where a lot of personal information of your customers or staff or whoever was breached, you can actually reach out to them and engage them to support your clients, so that if you're reaching out to your clients and saying, this unfortunately has occurred, want you to know that we take this very seriously, we want to provide you with support, ID Care are here to talk you through if you have any concerns. And so they can be a really, really important part of your overall incident response planning. And lastly, we're here to help. So we at Cynch, we have built an automated what we call cyber fitness platform that breaks down all of the various different things that you need to understand in your business into small bite-sized chunks. Plain language, just like I spoke today. I don't think you would have heard me use much in the way of tech speak, because I'm not a tech head. And so we break down everything into plain language in a way that you can understand, and we give you step-by-step instructions. So much of the information that you can Google out there is general in nature, but it doesn't actually tell you how to do it as a business owner. What we do is combine the why with the how. So we actually have a free cyber fitness bootcamp that you can go through on our platform. That's 6 weeks of tailored support through our automated system for you that's completely for free. And if you do want somebody to reach out to and have a weekly phone call, you can get that for just $500 per business as well, for 6 weeks worth of cybersecurity advice. But even just aside from that, our website there has a stack of resources. If you go into our blogs and our fitness exercises, there's a stack of information there that we give away free in terms of checklists and all the things that you might need to get you started on all of this. So we're here to help.